Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We have a great webinar scheduled and ready to go today. Let me make sure all my windows are ready. Okay. People are jumping in. Welcome, welcome. I am Katie Fielding, the Educational Content Manager here at Book Creator, and we have a really great guest today. We have Brooke Conklin from Forward Edge. She is the Assistant Director of Coaching Programs, and I've actually been through one of her programs myself as a coach when I was in my district. And so she has some really great ideas and topics to share about sharing really powerful, reflective, and actionable feedback if you're a coach with your mentees, and then vice versa. Because I think for me, also as a coach, receiving feedback from my mentees was really, really important. And so I'm going to pass it to Brooke. It is going to be a conversation between us. And so please, we'd love for you to introduce yourself in the chat as you're jumping in today.
Thanks, Katie. Yeah, it's funny. It's such a small world in coaching and ed tech. Like Katie said, we connected like way before this in kind of different capacity. And then even as I'm looking at our attendance list today, I see so many familiar names that I know from different like places and reasons. So thank you guys for taking time out of your day today to come join us. All right, we'll go ahead and dig in. Welcome. Introduce yourself in the chat. Today we're talking about feedback and reflective coaching conversations. I'm assuming we have a lot of coaches on the call today, but I'm also assuming there are a fair amount of us that might not be coaches yet, might be interested in coaching, or maybe just find themselves in peer coaching situations often. So with everything that Katie and I are about to talk about, just like she said, that this skill can be practiced in a variety of different ways outside of just the coaching position. So I'm excited to share with you, excited to learn from you. And here we go. All right, so I'm Brooke. I'll just give you the brief like elevator pitch here. I work for an organization called Forward Edge. We support technology and education. I specifically support coaches, both instructional and technology, in just developing coaching skill sets to help advance change in their district. Couple of places that you may have connected with me or might be new to you. Our team has a fantastic podcast. It's linked in here, supporting coaches. We also run the EDU Coach Network, a community for coaches, and we hold different events throughout the year, like our Coaches Camp. So Katie, I know, is going to share this whole book with you, plus a bonus book for your own use at some point. So you'll have access to all of these links to connect with us if you would like. All right, so today we are talking about really three main things. First, how we can provide more effective feedback to help teachers ultimately grow and improve student learning outcomes. We are looking at how we actually create that environment that allows us to give feedback, knowing that we can't really just like go in cold without a relationship and start spouting feedback and expect for it to be well received. So how do we create that trusting environment? Then what are some communication and coaching strategies that we can employ to help teachers self-reflect and develop their own skills? So that is what we are getting into today. So I know we still have intros pouring in the chat, which I love. I have a question for you so we can continue to make the chat a little bit more chaotic. Think about a time when you received feedback that helped you grow. So feedback that actually made a difference for you. And what was it about that feedback that made it impactful? And if you could share any thought, any connection you have in the chat, we would appreciate it. What is, it's a time someone gave you feedback that helped you. What was it about that made it actually helpful? So start putting those in the chat. We're going to keep going here. And then we're going to see how aligned we are. Alrighty, I have specific, actionable, honest, specific, lots of specifics. I need a word cloud generator in Zoom right now. All right, so I'm seeing it in the chat. I'm seeing it here. Effective feedback that actually leads to change is often specific, number one, actionable, it produces growth, and then it's ultimately timely. So when we think about these four things, specific, meaning that we're pointing out maybe what was good, what could be improved, and we're being specific about how, right? and we're suggesting an action that the teacher, the individual receiving the feedback, can take to then act on that feedback. We want that feedback to lead to growth. That's the goal of the feedback, right? The goal of the feedback isn't to assert our opinion or our perception. It's to help the individual grow or implement change. And ultimately, we want it to be timely too, right? Education moves 10,000 miles a minute. And if we sit on our feedback, a lot of meaning can be lost over time because we haven't made that connection right away for teachers. So Katie made this really amazing template. I'll let her kind of go over, but I just thought this was a great way to conceptualize this concept of powerful feedback.
Yeah, well, I didn't make it, first of all. I just edited a bit from one of our many templates that we have in Book Creator. But I just kind of edited who it was for because originally it said student A to student B. And I just said this is feedback actually for the coach from the coachee. Because like I said, I liked receiving feedback based on my coaching from those that I was supporting. And so I also think it's really important to ask people what kind of feedback they want to receive, like when I'm coaching them. Um, I would always say, like, I noticed Kristen in the chat said she found that feedback that was relating to something she found relevant was the most actionable. So whenever I was coaching someone, I'd be like, what do you want to receive feedback on? What do you want me to look for? Because that's what's going to matter to the teachers that you're supporting the most. And I think the same thing goes when the coach wants to receive feedback back. So I like this little structure because as the coach, I'm giving this to my coachee to say, hey, give me some feedback. I want to hear like, what can I do better next time? Or what did you like that I did? And so it's just a great place to kind of um, recognize to your coachee that like it's a reciprocal relationship, the coaching relationship. It's not just a one way street.
Yeah, I love that so much, Katie. And that I think just that simple gesture of asking before giving feedback goes a long way in making the feedback collaborative and not evaluative, right? So I just wanted to like highlight that little golden nugget there. Um, so when we are thinking about giving feedback, the first thing that we need to do before we actually give that feedback is to prep the environment, right? We want to build trust and psychological safety so that that feedback can be received. You might be familiar with this. This was not a me creation. It was done by someone way more brilliant than I am. But this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And we often see this when we are learning about how to support students in their learning. I think it's overlooked when we talk about supporting adults and supporting teachers. So what we want to help teachers be able to internalize feedback as we're giving it, we want to make sure that their basic needs and their psychological needs are being met. So some ways that we can do that are through some trust building strategies. That's really how we can invest in those maybe mid to lower level Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We can employ things like active listening, empathy, confidentiality, maintaining judgment-free conversation, and then just being consistent. So a couple of things that this might actually look like, because those all sound like great things. Those are what we want to do. But on the ground, I'm just going to highlight a couple here. Modeling vulnerability goes a long way in creating a space for psychological safety. That might look like asking or maybe pointing out to a teacher like what you're learning from them first before you give your feedback, right? So you might highlight the things that you see are really great and are going really well and compliment them and point those out. Also seeking feedback from the teacher. If you can be the first to get feedback, often that goes a really long way in the teacher being receptive of your feedback. So maybe like Katie and I are both in the world of technology. Maybe we are modeling a new tool or new platform for a teacher's class, and we're going to ask the teacher for feedback. How was my delivery? How was my pacing on this? In making the first step being to get feedback yourself, I think goes a really long way. I don't know, Katie, if you want to highlight anything that you found particularly helpful with trust building.
Yeah, I also think often we think of confidentiality as like not talking about the negative things around, the coaching experience, but I also think that it can be really powerful in the positive things. And I always like to ask people, like when I'm coaching them, how do you like to be celebrated? Because some people don't want you to go back to the staff meeting and be like, hey, Karen did this amazing thing in her class. Not everyone wants to be shouted out well. So I think confidentiality can go both ways on it's most important, of course, for any, maybe negative side things, but it can also be really important to keep confidentiality on the good side as well.
Yeah, excellent point there. And that's something like on our team we experience too, kind of firsthand. And you think you're doing something really great by shouting someone out, but you could be having the opposite effect. So I just love that like individualistic approach. So we've been sharing a couple of these screenshots, and I don't know if we've actually told you what these are coming from. So Katie's put together this really amazing book that complements this topic really well. And so whether you like take this book and you use it as is, or you just like implement some of these strategies, I think it's really helpful. So when we are building trust with our teachers, Katie mentioned figuring out how they want to be celebrated. We want to make sure that we are building up, right? We want to invest in the building up so that when we provide that feedback, it's not seen as a knock, it's seen as a support to help teachers grow even greater. So that's one way that you can engage in a trust building strategy. Another couple things are building rapport, sharing about yourself, inviting teachers into your world and helping them to understand you as a person just as much as you are seeking to understand them as a human and as an individual. And then keeping the work collaborative, right? We've all been, if you have been in teaching a hot minute, you can remember a time that administrators sat in your room and started taking notes on this like private document, and then they left and then you didn't hear about it for a long time. And that was anxiety inducing. So making the work and the feedback and the note taking as collaborative and transparent as possible goes a long way in establishing trust.
Yeah, and I did put the link to the webinar notebook again in the chat where you can get the coaching notebook today.
Katie. And then the next thing that we want to pay attention to is actually how we communicate. So we know the components of effective feedback. We know that we need to create an environment that allows for trust and safety. Now we actually have to pay attention to how we communicate. And I love this quote by Stephen Covey because it really keeps me in check like daily. And that is the biggest communication problem is we do not listen to understand, we listen to reply. And I think in coaching, we've probably heard some version of this at least once before. But when you reflect introspectively, and if you're anything like me, I often find that for whatever reason, whether it's like being nervous about my response, feeling maybe intimidated because I'm in a content area that I'm not familiar with, I am listening to make sure that my reply is sound. And we can have so much bigger of an impact if we are actually listening to understand more than we are thinking about our response. Easier said than done. So this iceberg communication is a great visual to keep in mind when you're communicating with teachers. And that is when we're communicating, we hear and see actions and words, but there is so much more beneath the surface that is a part of that communication that is not necessarily visible. So things like meaning. Yes, the teacher might be saying something. They might have maybe a different meaning behind that than you're interpreting, or maybe there's like a meaning that they're keeping to themselves because maybe they don't feel like they can share for whatever reason. Or their values, right? I might go into a classroom and I might see that, it's chaotic. There's students having conversations in every corner of the room. There seems to be no rhyme or reason. I might assume, based on my observation, that teacher doesn't know how to handle her class. In reality, that teacher might have a very high value for collaboration and for belonging in her classroom. And that is priority, and that is why her classroom is so active. So if we're paying attention and we're seeking out to understand the meaning, the values, the beliefs that the teacher has, that can make our feedback not only more impactful, but better received as well. So I have a couple of questions, and I might flip through this a little faster than your hand can write if you are a note taker. But you will have the digital copy if you want any of these questions. These are just some of my favorite and Katie's favorite questions to ask teachers to help us be better active listeners. So when we're uncovering meaning, one of my favorite ones is to ask, so tell me about, or how do your goals and your, sorry, let me back up. So tell me, how do your goals and your students, I think I made a typo. I'm not reading this right. I'm just going to verbalize it. So tell me, based on the goals you have for your students, how is that like informing how you design this? Or how are you thinking about assessing these students based on like your goals for them, or maybe their goals for themselves? So making a connection between like the intended result and then what's actually happening. And I'm not making any like judgment in that question. I'm really asking and just bringing to light if what the teacher's ultimate goal was, the meaning that they had for that activity, is lining up with what they are doing, what it actually fleshed out to be. I also love asking about the story behind something. That's a really simple way to get an in. So if you're walking into a classroom and you just happen to be seeing an activity or students engaging in something, asking, what's the story behind this activity? Like, what made you think of this? Like, where did you find this? Where did you source this? What do you love about this? Because that can give you a lot more insight into the background thinking too. And then uncovering values, I think is really interesting and something that maybe we overlook in coaching. We come into coaching with our own maybe perceptions of what a classroom should look like or feel like or sound like. And there is not necessarily a black and white answer for that. So if we can, in conversation with teachers, help uncover what they value in instruction and what they value in the student experience, it can help us frame our feedback to help them grow towards their vision of what they're trying to achieve, rather than helping them grow towards our vision of what they should be achieving. So a question I like to highlight on this is, if you could achieve one thing in this area, what would it be? So I might employ this question if a teacher is coming to me with a particular like challenge or frustration. Say they have a class that is like, I keep referring back to classroom management, but like totally off task. And they're just having a real hard time getting the kids to connect to the content and to find the value in it. So I might say that's like a really big problem and a really big challenge and totally valid. Like, if you could make one small change in what's happening, what would it be? And that can help the teacher reflect on, what is priority for them and what they value most in that area that they might be a little bit frustrated with. And then the last active listening and questioning technique I have is uncovering beliefs. So this is another one that we can accidentally let our perceptions flood into the conversation if we're not careful in our judgments. We might go into a class and we might see like a big problem with maybe pacing. And we might assume that the teacher is challenged by one particular aspect of pacing, or that they just don't know how to do XYZ correctly, or whatever it is. Instead of inserting our opinion of like how something should be, we're going to ask the teachers what their beliefs around it are. So we might ask the teacher, like, what do you think is the biggest challenge to like the pacing structure of this unit? or if that sounds too judgmental, we might say like, what are your biggest challenges when you're looking at your scope and sequence for Unit 4? Like, what is most challenging to you? And we might back up and see what the teacher's belief is around that particular unit or how instruction should look. In your like the coach book that Katie shared with you, you'll find some templates to, I think, do this really nicely. There's a goal setting template. I encourage you to do this with teachers, any type of goal setting, right? We really want goals to come from the teacher and what they care about and what their priorities are. And then we help support, right? So in this goal setting document here, we're going to start with the goal, and then we're going to help them figure out what their next 3 steps are going to be to make progress. And this is a great opportunity to practice some of those questions that we just looked at to help guide that goal setting work. Also, that glow and grow that we already looked at, another really great place to highlight and align our feedback with some of the teacher's values and beliefs about instruction. The last thing that we want to be cognizant of when we are giving feedback is responding to people as individuals. We don't want to give just blanket feedback. We want to make sure that our coaching is meeting the individual needs of every single teacher that we support. So when we think of differentiation, and I think I'm pretty guilty of this too, I often think of differentiation in like a PD setting. That's what comes to mind the most is how can I differentiate this PD? But we can actually differentiate our daily coaching too, which I think is really cool. So I've split this up in a couple of different ways here. We have our novice teachers, our experienced teachers, and then our teacher leaders. So if we're differentiating by experience level, and I'm about to pick Katie's brain about her experience with this too. Our new teachers, they don't have like past experience in the classroom to pull from. They might need more direction in their feedback. They might need more help coming up with those next 3 steps of their goal than our novice teachers are going to have. Our more experienced teachers, they have that background experience. They have trials and errors, and they have challenges and successes. And that feedback is probably going to be a lot more collaborative, leaning on their past experiences to help guide the goal setting and the feedback. And then our teacher leaders, those individuals that are either have like a formal position where they are leading their peers or they are just naturally influential. We can differentiate our support for them by giving them opportunities to give feedback to their peers. And sometimes that is just like connecting, making connections. One of my teachers, their favorite things to do are see other teachers teach, to see it in real life. So creating those opportunities for peer coaching and peer conversations to happen can be a way that we differentiate our support for our more influential teacher leaders. So Katie, I don't know if you have anything that worked particularly well for you in differentiating by experience level.
No, there was a few things that I did, and I do think, definitely the novice teachers, tapping into any mentoring programs that are within your district or school and being a part of that as a tech coach was something that really helped me. So like our new teachers at my high school where I was a coach had monthly meetings with their mentor and all the other new teachers in a room. And I would go to all of those meetings because that was a great way for me to hear about things that they were experiencing in their class and finding ways that I could support them. And then for my teacher leaders, we made a blended learning cohort. So we had that cohort of those teachers who are ready to like do the next thing and wanted to try and wanted to learn from each other and wanted to be in each other's classrooms and watch. And so we created a cohort for them so they could learn from each other and we could learn together. So I think providing those optional PD experiences and then just finding the spaces where you can get in with the different groups and listen to their needs was way that I was able to make some impact.
Yeah, I love the conversations that come from connecting teachers to other teachers. And I don't know, sometimes it feels like it has a better impact when you are able to see someone else in your same position doing that thing. And sometimes all we have to do is facilitate that opportunity. We don't have to drive it all the time. We can also differentiate by learning modalities. I'm not going to call these preferred learning modes. I'm not up to date on the latest research on it, but I'm pretty sure that's been debunked because we all learn in different ways all the time, right? We don't necessarily have one way that we learn. But what that means for us in our coaching, how we provide feedback, we want to provide a lot of variety in how that feedback comes across. So we can do things like providing visual supports. Let's say we have a big emphasis on Kagan strategies this year. I can verbally coach on Kagan, but I can also have some handouts, some anchor charts, some quick guides that help show those different structures. I can engage in auditory supports through verbal reflection. I'm also going to point out here, it is every coach's dream to be able to have an uninterrupted one-on-one conversation with a teacher or an administrator, and rarely does that get to happen anymore. So to provide coaching and cater to our auditory learning modalities, we don't have to be reliant on live communication. There are many great resources that we can use to do asynchronous audio feedback. So say in your coaching notebook that you have the template for, if there's just not time to sit down and meet and you really need to communicate in a conversation versus like written out in text, use the audio record feature. Record what you're thinking, record what you saw, use your tone, use your inflection, use your energy, and leave that for a teacher to consume at their own time. I think is a great way that we can still have conversation and cater to this learning modality without taking up a ton of time. Kinesthetic supports. This is something we do naturally, but I don't know if we think about it a lot. This is when we are modeling, we are role playing, we are co-teaching. We are helping teachers understand this new way of instructing by being hands-on in their learning. So often that takes place in the teacher's own classroom. So I know a lot of you do that every day, but you might not have thought about it as a differentiation strategy for your coaching. And then in different environments, we can also change the way that we provide feedback. I think a lot of us are also doing this without maybe thinking about it. But depending on how you're working with teachers, you're going to change what coaching and feedback might look like. So if you're working with a small group of teachers, maybe it's a teaching team, maybe it's a department, that is going to look like more collaborative learning. We're sharing, we're problem solving, we are talking together. Our role as a coach is more to facilitate that. If you are in a small group of teachers, there are more experiences than yours in the room, and you can pull those experiences into the conversation. During instruction in a teacher's classroom, that focus for that coaching is going to be that immediate feedback, problem solving in real time, adjusting instruction on the fly. So our role in that type of setting to differentiate our support is to be an observer, to provide reflective questions, model strategies, or if we see something that we can offer our support, jumping in and offering our support as the teacher might need it. And then in our one-on-one coaching, this is going to be a lot more focused. It's going to be personalized to that individual teacher, their challenges, their ideas, their goals. So our role in that type of setting is more of an active listener. We're providing feedback specific for that teacher. We're providing that teacher resources for them, and then we're encouraging them privately. So again, all of these things you're doing in your coaching role, but they're all a differentiation strategy that we naturally do to cater our support to different environments. Katie, I'm swinging it back to you. Did you have anything that you either did consciously or unconsciously as you're moving between like different coaching environments?
Yeah, and well, I'm a big UDL person in general, and so customizing and making sure we're making all the spaces accessible. So as far as like going from one-to-one coaching, one thing that I did to like make that more of an accessible experience is, while I do love these book creator templates, sometimes putting your computer away for these conversations can be really impactful, or putting it to the side. And so something I would often do is like use a like Otter AI to record the conversation. So the computer's on the side recording, And then like both of us could just literally have a conversation and not have to take notes because something else was doing it for us so that we could really concentrate on that personal interaction and having an authentic conversation. And we could get those notes and those like key takeaways from the note taker later. So I think that's something that could obviously be used in any of these kind of environments to make a more authentic experience while people are in it. Because I think people really thrive on that human interaction piece. And sometimes putting the tech to the side to let it do its job as another thing can be really nice.
Yeah, Katie, curiosity for you.
Yeah.
Those auto AI notes, I'm assuming, do you share them with the teacher? Is that a shared resource or is that more something internal private?
100% shared. Yes. No, not for me. That's for them. The whole coaching is about them, right? So yes, that would be a shared resource. And then you can also have AI do some nice things like pulling out the key points, what were the action steps? And it was like when I first started doing it, it was just a transcript and I had to kind of go through and get that content. But now you can obviously get that in a more efficient way too.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that especially because the AI is taking the notes that are ultimately supporting both of you. That AI is coming like without judgment, without evaluation, pure like documentation for the both of you. Because I agree with you, often like taking down notes can feel, I don't know, evaluative, make teachers feel uneasy, or like also for the coach can pull you away from some of that authentic conversation. So what a great strategy. Now I want to go coach and try it. Alrighty, so we've covered a lot of ground, and really, I think skimmed the surface on a lot of the stuff that I could just talk about all day with you, Katie, and with everyone on the call. So I'll pause and ask if you have any questions. I don't know, Katie, how you like to organize questions. Are you more of a chat gal or a Q&A gal?
Yeah, we can have them put it in the Q&A. Usually we have them do that. So if you have anything, go ahead, drop it in the Q&A. We'll take a look there. I do see that Katie Gibson has a question in the chat, and she says she's looking to try and get some items and resources together in Schoology. So maybe if you are a Schoology user and you want to connect with Katie on that, you can do that. But I know that I, as a coach, always had my own Canvas. We use Canvas. Same thing could be done in Schoology. My own classroom to kind of keep all those resources for my teachers, all the PD stuff. What about you, Brooke? Did you use your LMS with
Yeah,
teachers?
I was trying to remember. As a teacher, we had Schoology. So my coach used Schoology to organize resources. And then as a coach, I was at a school with Google Classroom. So we use Google Classroom. I feel like during the pandemic, we dabbled a little bit in like a Google site
Okay.
to organize information in a way that you could kind of easily preview and see. Um, yeah, I think those were the couple of containers we used.
I have a question in the chat that says, what did you use for your auto notes? I personally used at that time Otter AI, but I know there are lots of them out there now. Do you have one, Brooke, you like?
So we do a lot of like Google Meet stuff. So I will use Gemini that's native in Google Meet. I don't know if that's what tier that is on their product suite. But it is really cool because I can start my Gemini notes right in the Google Meet. It has all of the action items as a summary of the meeting. If there's like not a ton of people on the call, it will also tell you kind of who said what. So it's pretty concise, and then it automatically links the transcript in. So if I'm looking at it and I'm feeling like there's something missing, I can always go back and view the full transcript. But it does a really good job of capturing highlights.
All right, and another question for you. How do you approach differentiation for PD that is happening concurrently for groups with different needs or skill levels? And I think we've
Um,
all seen that, right? A teacher, a PD, you're holding a PD session, and you have a lot of different levels in the room.
yeah, so a couple different structures for you to try. Um, One of them, and it really depends on the topic and the content. I've done a playground model in the past where essentially I used to use ThingLink, but they cut down on some of like the pricing and stuff. So I would now recreate it in Genially probably. you could probably also do it in Book Creator, because they have some, like you could have different pages for, sorry, I'm getting my visual in my head, different pages for different contents. But so really like whatever your preferred medium is that your teachers are most comfortable with. And I would have like a big picture of a playground, the school, a track, a football field, whatever is the routing document. And then I would create little hyperlinks along the playground or along the track or along the school. And each of those hyperlinks would take the teachers out to like a different asynchronous learning page. So I might have like on each page a quick little video and some action steps. So this was particularly helpful. I did a PD with, I think it was arts, foreign language, music, business, and all grade levels from 7 to 12 on technology. Pretty broad. And so I just created a bunch of different embedded pinpoints for different technology tools. And then on each page that it was linked to, I had some suggested uses for each content area, and then a quick video. So you could do kind of a choice exploration that way. Another way that I've seen be like really cool is to think about what common information that everybody in the room needs, and to start with that in like a 10-minute core session where you are the facilitator kind of delivering that core information. And then after that 10 minutes is up, have different areas in the room where you direct people that are like different subgroups of people. So you might have like an elementary group, a middle school group, or you could do it by content area. And then each physical station could have a QR code to other self-explore resources. It could link to back to your LMS, and you could have some lessons built in there. So I would try to think about like a flipped model, I guess is what I could summarize that to be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I loved using different blended learning structures with teachers just as much as with students.
Yeah.
I think that's all the questions. But Brooke, we're so glad you were here today to talk about coaching. Um, you have coaching programs in Michigan, Virginia, Georgia, and in Ohio. But if people aren't in those places, how could they get in touch with Forward Edge and how can you support them?
Yeah, so we do a variety of things. If you're not in one of our states that we offer coaching certification programs in right now, I'm very sad. I would love to connect with you in that way. But we do a lot of other really cool things too. So the first way I'd recommend connecting is through the EDU Coach Network. So I'll drop that link in the chat here. I actually see several names on our list that are members in the network. Hello. So you can catch us there. We have monthly events. We have an online discussion community, different challenges every month to help connect and share around common topics. So it's really fun, super casual, a great way to like connect with us and greater coach community. And then if you want to connect with me, I am professionally on Twitter. My handle is coming in the chat now. Also on Instagram and Facebook, but if you go there, you're just going to see pictures of my kids. So professionally on Twitter, if you want to connect with me there, I'd love to chat and follow up and just stay in touch with each other's work. And then I'll also push out through my Twitter account all of the events that we're doing so you can stay in the loop with those.
Awesome. Well, we want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you again, Brooke. I put a link in the chat just now to our webinar page. We have a couple great STEM related webinars coming up. So we'd love for you to join us for those. One is about you getting kids into the outdoors with the national parks, and another one is going to be during CS Education Week, all about coding. And so we'd love for you guys to join us with those. I see so many names in the chat that are familiar. We're so glad you're here today, and have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.